This podcast is sponsored by Tusk, a continuity of business solution for industries that struggle with traditional banking. Check them out on the web at tusk.network. The Rob McNealy program is the nexus of cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, and entrepreneurship. Now, welcome to the program. Now we're recording.
All right.
Today, I'm talking with David Morris. He is a staff writer with Breaker Magazine, an amazing new online crypto world media outlet. And David and I have been talking via social media now for some time. And I want to bring him on the show today to talk about some things that I think are kind of troublesome in the crypto industry. And I've been pretty vocal about this kind of stuff on my own Twitter feed, but I'd love to give accolades to people in the world out there, that in the media side of things, that are going after and pointing out some of the more, I call them the skeletons of the closet, so to speak. But welcome to the show, David.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Thank you for coming on. So before we jump in here, can you give a little bit of background of where do you come from? And how did you get involved with writing about crypto stuff?
So I have a slightly unusual background. I've actually spent the first 10, 12 years of my career as an academic. I have a PhD in media studies, which is sort of understanding how technology shapes the way we communicate and how culture and society result from that. So, talking about media at the time, I was like studying the media as a way that people use power and things like that. And then about 12 years into that, I realized that I was way too good of a writer to be an academic. And
high five.
Then I went and freelanced for a while, including writing for Fortune quite a bit. And after 3 or 4 years of that, I was recruited to join this thing called Breaker that we started about 6 months ago, I'm going to say. I think we officially launched in September, and it's been amazing. We have a staff of about 8 people, and we're all like there in our newsroom doing like real reporter stuff, and talking to each other about stories, and we have a good time. And our goal is to apply serious reporting to what we have known for the last few years as kind of the Wild West of crypto. So we're at the beginning of that trip, but I think we've had some good enthusiastic uptake so far from people.
I see your little furry friend is behind you. You got an audience there.
Yeah. As soon as I pay any attention to anybody else, he really wants to get in the middle. So I'll see what I can do about that. But now he wants to scratch himself on the mic stand. So
he just really wants to know the answer to the question, when moon?
Yeah.
So one of the things that you and I have kind of chatted about offline, or technically it'd be online, is reporting in the media around the crypto world, going back to, late 2017 and through 2000, well, all of last year in 2018. The crypto media environment has been very interesting to watch. As someone I've spent a little bit of time here and there in the media. I had a radio show before and a little bit of podcasting, but as you and I have talked about, we launched our token project last year, beginning of 2018, and what I saw as a token project, and even now, the level of graft in crypto just amazed me. I was astounded. And what I mean by that is, I used to come from the world of, I had a small business radio show in Denver, which I turned into a podcast, years ago. And I never ever thought to charge somebody for an interview before. Yeah. Like, it didn't, just never occurred to me that was like a thing, right? The traditional model of,
you have honorable instincts.
Well, the traditional model of broadcast, right? Even on podcast is, you're selling ads or something, or you're, at least using it as a lead gen for your own business, whatever take you're using it for. I never thought to charge a guest.
Yeah.
And the first time I came into contact with an influencer in crypto, it was someone I had known for years, and I'm not going to out them or dox them right now because I'm just not that way. But is someone I've known for about 10 years, and he is a crypto influencer. You'd probably know who he is. And I said, hey, we're launching this crypto project, and we're doing it in a way that's not an illegal ICO. We're not selling anything. We're not a scam. We're just really into the space, and we're building this community thing out. If you be happy to talk about it on your show, kind of thing. And he's like, and this is when ETH was like $700. He's like,
yeah,
it's normally 7 ETH to come on my show, but I'll let you come on for 5. And I looked around and go, what do you mean? I was just like dumbfounded, right? Like,
yeah.
And at the time, even on his stuff, which is completely illegal, he wasn't acknowledging on his website and YouTube channel and that people were paying for his time and his promotion. And it's funny because now he's got some labels on his website. I noticed the other day that he now puts there that some guests may have paid.
Yeah.
But to me, not only was it shocking that, this quote unquote influencer, and he is an influencer, was charging for projects to come on and pimp it, but it was an astounding amount for what you're really getting, my friends and family discount was $3,500 or something around that time. And I'm like, for like a 20-minute interview, you're going to charge me $3,500. I mean, and it was just insane to me. And so, and I found going on with our project over last year that this is not only unusual. This was like kind of the norm with crypto people. And so what have you been seeing out there in the crypto media world along this line of Graft?
I mean, there's a lot of it. And I think that there's an intersection of a couple of different things, which is people who are coming to crypto right now, whether they're in the media or whether they're even working on the product side, or they're kind of financial people starting hedge funds or VC funds. Everybody, well, not everybody, but the vast majority of people are doing this thing for the first time, whatever it is. So that includes, people who are they're writing about crypto, and, a lot of those people are young and haven't been sort of schooled in the norms of how journalism is supposed to work. And so there's a kind of open door there. Obviously, there's a lot of sort of profit potential. And so just the pressure to get a lot of visibility and shill as much stuff as you can creates a structure where there's an incentive to pay for a position. At Breaker, one of the big things that we did early on, and I have to give incredible credit to my colleague Corn Faith, who ran the investigation. So we reached out to a bunch of websites, news websites, and it's a really fun. We created a fake Russian ICO, and
that's redundant.
Well, there you go. But we told them that we were looking to promote this thing, and that we're not really comfortable with having the promoted tag on these stories about us. So what can we work out? And we had a bunch of these websites that quoted us amounts between like $500 and like $3,500 to run stories about our fake project that we paid for, basically. And these are websites that if people are really deep into the cryptosphere, they'll know. Sites like NewsBTC, sites like Bitcoinist, and if you go to Breaker Mag, you can find our full report. But you're right, it's rampant on that side and on YouTube channels, I'm sure, things like that. And then there are also some other factors that we've also been talking about, because kind of in concurrence with this idea that everybody is corrupt, you have people who believe that all media is corrupt and do things like one of the things we've been talking about is this concept of do your own research. And one of the reasons that I reached out to you is because in a previous podcast episode, you sort of really took that idea to task and said, you're one of the people who has built businesses and been an investor in other fields. And you said, if you're an equity investor, do your own research is the worst advice. You said something along these lines. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so there's this other side where there's a sense that reporting isn't even a real thing, that there's no such thing as journalism that is actually interested in getting an objective truth. And those two things seem to go hand in hand. And I do think we're moving past it. I think that the crash and crypto winter is going to, I think, get some of the garbage out of the system in various ways. But it has been very interesting to watch over the last few years how that has become the norm.
Well, I will first say that I agree about the crypto winter being a good thing. As a project, there's far less spam and far less annoying people running around, and we've been able to focus on what we're doing and actually building something that is interesting with the new technology. One of the things that I also noticed about the journalism thing is, like, I've promoted business before and I've done a lot of PR, and typically in normal industries, when you send a press release, you just send it to all the relevant industry rags, and if they like your story or the hook and they think it's interesting, they'll interview you. One of the things that, and I think you mentioned several on the list that you just mentioned before, in the crypto world, you have to pay to send a press release to almost every outlet. And again, I've tried to explain this to people, and why this inherently is bad for crypto. I got a theory on why this is really bad for crypto, is because the only people that can really spend money on such ludicrous, overpriced, shilling are people that did illegal ICOs and did these incredible raises. And our project Tusk and OCC, it's a community project. We didn't do an ICO, and we don't have massive budgets. Everybody's doing this as a labor of love because we really believe in the gun industry, and we're doing this gun crypto thing. And so when I'm like trying to get the word out to the crypto industry that we're actually doing something and we're not selling anything, and we've structured our project in a way that we don't have this big burn rate where no one's driving a Lambo, but we're also not taking anybody's money and pissing it down the, private jet rat hole and not actually building a project.
Right.
So one of the things that I just was astounded by is, and honestly, David, this is one of the main reasons I started this podcast. Running a podcast is a lot of work, and I'm not making any money on this. Now, I'm all disclosure, I'm hoping to promote our project Tusk. If that's the main reason I'm doing this, because I like our project Tusk, and this is good. But I still want to be able to give back and do real podcasty things. Like, I want to talk to interesting people that are doing interesting things. I'm not getting paid a dime. But I did this because I wanted to be the example that I would like other people in the industry to follow. I don't charge for interviews. If someone's got a great idea and they want to talk about it, talk to me. I like all ideas. I may not agree with it, but I might be interested in talking or telling the story. Now, if they're clearly a scam, no. But in general, that's why I wanted to do this, is because I wanted to get out there and talk to people that are in the industry, because I really believe in the underlying blockchain technology and the underlying ideas behind crypto. I'm still a pirate at heart. So that's still a focus for me. And then with our project, it's amazing at how, much we see out there as a project, how much people try to scam you or, rope you into spending stupid amount of money on really ridiculous promotions. But back to the topic of do your own research that you mentioned earlier. One of the things that I hate, and this is a line you hear from all the crypto influencer shill types, right, is don't take my advice, do your own research. And to me, that's the most ludicrous thing I hear out of people, is because it's impossible on an ICO to really do your own research on it. And now that doesn't mean you can't go do a little bit of digging, but I think what you were talking about with even the modest amount of digging, it's amazing what you can find and verify. But one of the problems with the crypto world is there's no business plans from any of these startups. You got to remember, even if it's a crypto startup, it's still a startup. So
there's no requirements for transparency. Those are all things that are still coming in. It's so new,
Well, but the thing is, when we first came into this world, with our project, I started looking, I'm like, man, this doesn't make sense. Like charging for interview thing. I went to a couple conferences in Miami and some other places, and I was like, I feel dirty around this. I've done a lot of trade show marketing. This was not that. And then, but the big difference here is, like, the whole point of ICOs is to pitch basically an illegal security in a startup company. And so early and outside of crypto, we call it early stage investing or angel investing. That's what it is, right? And normally that's the purview of people that already have some money and they're accredited investors, and angel investing is a thing, right? Like, and these people generally have some understanding of what it takes to, run a small business, and they can identify and mitigate risks of their investments, because these people have, being accredited investor, generally you have to have some money, and generally those people come out of the startup world themselves, and they have some skills there. But the thing is, angel investors, which I know a little bit about, when they're doing diligence on a project, they have a lot more information than a white paper.
They have a lot of access usually.
Let's start there. They have direct access to the management team. Right. Generally, an angel investor is meeting them at a pitch session face to face. So let's start there. But generally, startups actually have a business plan. Now, the things that are in a white paper generally would be incorporated into a business plan. Like if you have some kind of special underlying technology, you'll include that. But a business plan that has things like financial statements.
I don't think I've ever seen a white paper with a go-to-market strategy.
Marketing plan, execution plan, exit plan, and all these things. And then another thing that angel investors get is and I've seen this a lot, they do background checks on the management team. They do credit checks, criminal history checks on the background. Now, that'll tell you a lot. So I'll give you an example I saw and with a couple people, because I have investments in a lot of different crypto projects, and I've actually shifted a lot of them in the last couple months because I've started doing more diligence on a lot of these projects. I'm not convinced they're going to make it, but I went to a big conference in this blockchain space, and I would say the promoter of the conference, I'm not going to dox him, the promoter of the conference, well-known personality. You go and looked at his LinkedIn, and and he's probably, I'm in my 40s, he's got to be in his late 30s or 40s, and he's got a LinkedIn profile, and everything before 5 years ago has vanished. There's nothing there. Everything he's got is crypto, but there's nothing before that. And I'm like, well, what were you doing from you were 22 to 35, right? Then none of that everybody in crypto is new. In fact,
I know it's insane.
So if you don't have something on your LinkedIn from 3 years ago that's not crypto, I'm a little concerned. Right?
Yeah, and that is the kind of basic research that people can theoretically do for themselves, but even that kind of stuff, or cross-referencing a team page with okay, is this person real? Something like that. One thought that I had when I was preparing for this was, I think one common denominator of all crypto people is that we're fascinated by markets, right? Like, markets are these machines that work in interesting ways and accomplish interesting things that we sort of collectively, we as human beings, organize ourselves using markets. And going back 400 years or whatever it was, Adam Smith, when he was talking about markets, one of the fundamental things that say hello. Fundamental things that he's extremely jealous that I'm giving attention to this man in a box. One of the things that Adam Smith pointed out as a fundamental element of capitalism and markets is division of labor, right? So you become a specialist in something, and by doing that, you then, the farmer frees up the wheelwright or the cooper to do their jobs and do it as well as they can. And even this stuff that's very basic, like check their LinkedIn, look at their background, see what we can find out about these people. Those are skills, and those are ways of thinking, and being critically minded about, is this person really going to do what they say they're going to do? Obviously, journalists aren't the only people with that skill set, but it is, one set of people who specializes in doing that, and then, at least in theory, we then market those products to people those information products to people who care about them and can benefit from them. So, we were talking about do your own research as a catchphrase, and there are different, in a general sense, I don't object to that idea, but I have seen recently a few, I mean, I object to it in the sense that nobody can do all of the original research, right? You have to like have help. You have to have tools. You have to have access. You have to have people to talk to, or people who are going to maybe know how to do things that you don't know.
Well, I think that's the point, is that, you know, the whole concept, and you hear this a lot out there, is like, you know, the people who hate the SEC, and I'm not a big fan of regulation, but they say the average working man's locked out of the best and sweetest deals. Well, here's the one thing that the caveat is most of those deals are garbage and really, really high risk.
Yeah.
And here's the problem. And why was the SEC created? Right? And most people don't really go back to 1933, 1934.
Yeah.
The SEC was created because lots of mom and pops and people were wiped out for bad investments from schmoozy guys selling lines of crap for stocks that were worthless.
Yep.
And they lost everything, and they went to the government for bailouts. So the government created legislation to protect people from risky, high-risk, early-stage investments, because the average person does not have the skill set to manage or mitigate or identify and assess risk of early-stage investment. Now, I will say this. I understand the concept that people should be allowed to buy whatever they want. Okay, that's great. But you know, and this is where the libertarian in me kind of also understands human nature, is the fact is, I can tell you, as someone who's been an entrepreneur for a long time, someone who's made a living from being an entrepreneur, and someone who has an MBA, and someone who's also worked corporate, right? My understanding of business and the risks associated with being an early stage startup investor, my knowledge is very different because I'm an entrepreneur, and I've been there and I've done it. I will tell you, the average employee who's never, you know, I'm just saying the average middle-class employee, and I'm not bashing them. Right. They don't have the skills to understand how to assess risk in a startup.
Or even read a balance sheet in many cases, something like simple as that.
You know.
Now, I should say, I am actually pretty sympathetic to the argument that accredited investor rules as they currently exist are unsubtle. I think that there are a lot of people who don't have whatever it is, $1 million in liquid assets, who probably know enough to make some smart, high-risk investments. And, you know, I kind of do have some sympathy for people who say, well, we should have like a knowledge-based test for accreditation instead of like an assets-based test. I mean,
like don't mortgage your house to go buy lottery tickets.
Oh my God. Yeah. Boy.
But that's the perverse thing that happens, right? And here's why that is. And it happens every time there's like I call it a gold rush, right? Right. The gold fever, right? There's internet gold fever, right? The .com boom gold fever. There's been crypto gold fever. There's gold fever. There's oil gold fever, you know? And so whenever you have this gold fever, and trust me, I got excited when I first started getting crypto, and some of my coins went from $1,000 to $8,000 like every hour, right? You know, up in, you know, back in January, you know, in December, you know, it was pretty much like, wow, this is exhilarating. This is a rush. But what happens is when people get that adrenaline going and getting that excitement of getting rich quick, is an adrenaline rush. It shortcuts the brain. It shortcuts our judgment. And then people make really, really, really bad decisions about what to invest in. And so that's human nature. Now, I wouldn't disagree that, you know, maybe a skills-based test is the way to go. Maybe there should, and people hate me because I'm more of a libertarian. I'm like, hey, if people want to throw all their money out the window, that's their business, right? I get that mindset. Yeah. But we also have a situation where there's a lot of fraudsters and scams out there that are preying on that part of human nature. Yeah. And so, you know, and I go back and forth on this because I don't want to be, the government needs to be the nanny state and protect us from making bad decisions. I don't want to live in that kind of environment. But I also understand a lot of people are losing money to shills and to things that, you know, they don't know any better. Yeah.
And I think that the SEC is starting to get more aggressive. I don't know if I necessarily, well, they've gone after some scammers. They've gone after some influencers like DJ Khaled and Floyd Mayweather got dinged for promoting some known scams. Really looking forward to whatever happens with BitConnect and a few of the things that are also just like overt scams. But to circle back around to the media question, there are problems in the mediascape that also allow this to happen. And one of the biggest ones, one of the most enraging things to me is we reported on this back in, I'm going to say November. There's this guy named Ezekiel Osborne who was going around on the conference circuit and then in the media claiming to have been a co-founder of Monero. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, Monero is a privacy coin. It's one of the, I think it's still a top 10 coin. If not, it's right outside.
Right. It's a big project.
Its team is highly respected. And this guy was obviously lying because he was making claims about the nature of the launch that were simply false. And he, in ways that we still do not understand, wound up on the cover of Forbes Middle East edition as a crypto genius, or I forget what the tagline was exactly. And luckily, Riccardo Spagni, the lead developer of Monero, saw this and said, no, this guy. And so we just like wrote about that. We did a little bit of investigating into his background. It appears that before claiming to be a co-founder of Monero, he was running some real penny ante pump and dump groups, and actually scamming people who gave him money for pumps. So like very much a bottom feeder. And that situation, Forbes actually licenses its brand internationally. There's a Forbes Mexico, there's a Forbes Middle East. Forbes Mexico recently put a different shady crypto project on its cover. So you have this big respected US media brand that is selling its brand to these international third parties. It takes no editorial oversight over any of them. And then they're turning around and using that brand to, I'm sure they're getting paid money by these people. I mean, I'm not sure. It seems reasonable that they're, seems likely that they're getting paid money by these people to be put on the cover. And then of course we live in a global information market. So those covers get put on people's websites as proof that they're legit. They're basically using the Forbes brand. And so there's just this leaky system where the oversight isn't there. And there are a lot of different examples of that. We're doing some digging right now, and I can't get into any specifics, but if you're familiar,
get into specifics.
I really can't, but if you're familiar with contributor networks, there are these websites where anybody can go on and post content. A few years ago, there was an SEC investigation around Seeking Alpha, which is, if you don't know it, it's a equity-oriented investing website that also has a contributor network. And they discovered that there was a quote-unquote PR firm. This isn't actually what PR firms do, so I won't dignify them with that label, but there was a PR firm that was paying writers to go on the Seeking Alpha contributor network and write blog posts while they were getting paid by the people that they were writing about, which breaks the terms of service, is against the principles that this was supposed to be operating on. And we've found that there are some very clear examples of people writing on contributor networks who appear to be, or we have evidence are being paid for those posts that are being represented as neutral reporting about like, oh, this is a cool crypto project. So there's endemic problems with certain kinds of content out there that's being presented as objective reporting, all of which is to say, just like be careful and look to trusted sources, hopefully including Breaker. I would say CoinDesk for what they do is pretty good. The Block is a new news source that's great. These are all, ethical places where you can't buy coverage, and that's pretty key.
Well, I think that's the big the big delineation. If you're charging, I mean, it's just like anything else. If you make money from news, you're gonna give the most attention to the people that pay you,
right?
And so, and ultimately, that's not a meritocracy, and that doesn't mean that the best projects are rising to the top. And in fact, I would
Absolutely
contend that if you're paying to have someone promote your brand and they're not doing it organically, like the media outlet's not doing it organically because it's a good story, but because they're making cash. Now that distorts the market, because now the people out there, most people don't understand that. Even though you listed a bunch earlier, these organizations who have big followings in the crypto world, for instance, they charge for press releases. They're like thousands of dollars. And I don't know if it's worth it or not from a marketing perspective to be willing to pay that. But as a community project, it's hard for us to muster that kind of money because we didn't, do a giant raise. And we have something interesting we're doing now. I found, with our press releases so far, since we're targeting one specific industry, the industry has picked up our press releases just like any other normal, press release would get. We get coverage, but the crypto industry didn't. So it's funny with our Tusk project and our conversion from OCC, we've gotten almost no press coverage at all from the crypto world, but have gotten a lot from the gun industry journals because it's something new and interesting for guns. So I just think it's kind of sad and funny all at the same time that, even now it's still pay to play, and mostly in crypto.
And I mean, that's just like, I think that it's fair to guess that if you're having trouble getting pickup, I mean, obviously there are many, many factors, but when you've got people who are paying, who are competing for that attention, who are competing for that writer to spend 20 minutes doing an interview or something, I mean, it crowds out people who are doing, honest work. And there are two interesting counterexamples, just since we're talking about it. I think that recently you had Grin, which was another community launched project that actually managed to get some good attention. And I'm also pretty big fan, frankly, of Decred, which is another community project that, they're not exactly a community project, but they have not done paid PR until relatively recently. And, they're working with an honest shop. So you can get that traction. You can, and I think this is important to emphasize that, like, this isn't a situation where projects should just throw up their hands and say, oh, this is how it works, we've got to pay. Sometimes it just takes, persistence and strategy and hopefully waiting for some of the garbage to clear out. And that organic attention will come. So, hold on to hope.
well, no, I'm optimistic though. I mean, you and I are sitting here having this conversation now. It means we are part of that change. And I think we are hopefully, seeing the end of the graft. I think, there'll be a little bit here and there. I mean, let's just be honest, even with national media, there's always a little bit of that, right? I mean, it's always who you know and things, but the overt, advertising like, to send us our press release, you pay us, this much in Bitcoin. I think that'll eventually, I think that business model will die over time because, new products coming in, where the crypto winter, is flushing out. And I think just where we are is flushing out a lot of the garbage that were just bad projects on top of the SEC enforcement and everything else. And I think what's going to happen is normal business minds and etiquette and practices are coming into play now. And I think the models are going to have to change. And especially as we move toward, larger and larger audiences and larger, mass adoption of different projects in crypto over the next couple of years. This is what I told people. I think over the next year and a half to 24 months, you're going to see crypto kind of being down. And I think that's because, the SEC says they have several thousand cases in backlog of crypto ICOs going after.
I've heard that. That's amazing. But
they got like a couple thousand investigations going. Well, if you look at it, that's pretty much the same number of every ICO that sold to Americans in the last year and a half. So
that's amazing.
So it's just the government's waiting to get around to it. I mean, they're just working through their case log, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to depress them. It's going to depress the market a little bit. It's going to keep people out of the market for a little bit while that clears away. But what's going to end up happening is rational people are going to come in and say, look, this is legitimate tech, and there were scammers there. A lot of the projects who got the big, and this is the thing is, I think a lot of the ICOs, you got these people raised money that had no business or knowledge on how to manage actual big raises. Like,
Right.
yeah, and I'm not picking on developers, but just because you're a smart developer doesn't mean you're a smart business person or a smart money manager. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a couple projects. What I think is going to happen is you're going to have a lot of projects that were just bad ideas and they're going to go belly up. And now you also have a lot of projects that are just being badly managed or poorly managed because they're burning through, their burn rates are insane. There was a project the other day that, man, what one was it? It was one of, they have a foundation and they were asking for cash because they ran out of their treasury.
Was it Ethereum Classic?
I don't know if it was Ethereum Classic, but they said they had 135 employees like on their payroll.
Oh no, I remember the story. Why can I not remember who it was?
It wasn't Myota, was it?
No, it was either. I'm going to look at CoinMarketCap right now, and I can.
It was a established project, right? But you know, they and when I said, you know, I mean, our project's pretty small, but we have, you know, almost 10 developers, and we're getting a lot done with, you know, nobody getting paid. Everybody's working for some tokens. Everybody is volunteer. We're on a community project, and we're getting a lot done with like the development team we have. And when I looked at this article about this company or this project, and then it said, and they have 135 employees, and I'm like, what are they doing with that overhead, that burn rate? And not even getting into consensus, but
it was,
you know,
NEM. It's
NEM. It was NEM.
Yeah.
It was NEM.
And I mean, I think that's an amazing example because they had this tons of money for this token. And, you know, I've been a professional journalist focused substantially on crypto for almost 5 years.
Wow.
I have no idea what NEM is. I haven't got a clue. And I don't feel like I need to because they just don't seem to have anything other than we're a blockchain.
Right. It's like thus on blockchain. But
yeah.
But I think the thing that got me thinking is, one, they're out of money. And it makes sense. And the thing is, this also points out to me, though, part of the problem with early stage investing is that these guys got a lot of money, and a lot of these crypto projects kept the crypto in crypto. And I told my wife this. My wife's one of our partners in our project, but she's brilliant. And I was telling Christy, why are these guys keeping why aren't they cashing out the crypto as soon as they get it into cash, which would be more stable?
Yeah. and well, I guess if you have ETH, that's probably smart, or at least it was at certain points. But if most of your treasury is your own coin, you can't sell that because then you crash your own market.
But I'm talking about like the ICOs that took Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they like, well, I did a $45 million raise when ETH was $700, but when ETH is $80, you know, they've lost, you know, 90% of their value or what have you. And I think, and this is one of those basic business management decisions, right? Like if I would have run an ICO, I would have cashed out at least what I expected my burn rate to be for a year or two into dollars. So I have operating capital. And let's just be honest, even if you're a crypto startup, you still have to buy things like paper and computers, and you can't buy that stuff generally very easily with crypto. And the thing is, this is also part of and I think part of the reason why they didn't do it is so many people in the market's like, if you're selling out your treasury to cash, you don't believe in crypto.
Yeah, there is a reputational aspect for sure.
Right. And so, but that created situations now that they rode those crypto treasuries to the bottom, and now they're out of money. And so, but I was also thinking, okay, I'm not saying NEM doesn't need developers, and I don't know the extent of their project, but it seems to me for a project, and I just call them, they're just all companies. I don't care if they're nonprofits or decentralized. I mean, everybody, there's a business, right? I mean, they still have to have payroll and taxes and buying assets and things. And I'm like, they don't have a product. My knowledge is they don't actually have like any revenue or customers. And so to me, if you don't have revenue or customers, what do you have 135 employees doing? Because the burn rate, and I just don't know, maybe there's good reasons for it, but it doesn't make sense to me I just put my startup hat on. Like 135 employees is a big company. I mean, like, you know, my wife has a day job. I have a day job. I mean, my wife's company is they got like 50 employees and they're like, I don't know, like a $50 million company or something. And I'm like revenue wise, they're making lots of money every year. And I'm like, they only got like 50 employees or whatever. And I'm like, what is 135 employees doing over there when they don't have customers? And
and it's a major topic, and one that I think we're going to try and do some reporting on this year, or some writing about, some thinking about, because there's just the incentive structure is completely wrong. There's no when you're given like $100 million or $4 billion, like we're just going to have fun for a decade or so, and if we pick up some customers and revenue along the way, that's just a bonus. And I don't think, like, going into this entire sphere, again, the founders, many of them have never run a business before. Maybe they are developers, but they don't have necessarily that mindset. I mean, even you mentioned consensus, and I do in general have a lot of affection and a certain degree of confidence that that particular group of people, the Ethereum founders, that many of them were a little bit older, and many of them did have business backgrounds.
Sure.
But consensus, even a guy like Joe Lubin, who I believe has a Wall Street background, but I'm not gonna, don't quote me on that. But anyway, he has some life experience. He was like 45 when he joined the Ethereum team. But you give a guy like that $200 million, he's going to hire a bunch of kids and put them in a warehouse in Brooklyn and see what they come up with, and that's the plan. That can't be the plan. And I think we're, again, benefits of crypto winter, we're going to, as we've seen with consensus, see a lot of sharp pivots to where people are really trying to figure out how to make money, where the customers are. I mean, it's one thing we're talking about marketing and hype, I'll put it gently, and you got to give credit where credit is due. Justin Sun of Tron is the hype master, but he also has, well, I won't say he has customers because we don't know all that much about their real transaction volumes, but he has put gambling games on his blockchain, and people enjoy those.
He's doing actual mergers and acquisitions, whether or not you like them or not. I mean, with the BitTorrent and all that stuff, he's doing things. Yeah. You know, which look like businessy kind of things. Yeah. And yeah, he hyped it up, but it seems like they're doing some execution for sure. I was I'll be honest, I was an investor in Tron and actually made some good money because I sold it at the peak.
Yeah.
Last year. And that, if it wasn't for TRX, I would have actually had some serious losses with my crypto portfolios outside my own projects. But they're doing something and they're still around. And apparently, they, like I said, you're right. They've been delivering product, which it's interesting how many ICOs have not. Yeah. It's insane. But the customer thing, and this has been our focus, and I've had this conversation with lots of people, is that if you go look at right now, if you go look at CoinMarketCap and you look at the top 20, 25, 30 projects, even most of the top 100, and go look at their websites, there's something really lacking on all those websites and all those teams. And it's sales people, marketing people, and business development people. Almost none of the projects have anybody, or if they do, it's like one guy out of like 30. And this is you hear everybody talking about the holy grail of the killer app of, that will get mass adoption. Right. Right. And I said, now I'm coming from the outside. I am not an activist. I am not a true believer in the sense that I believe in pie in the sky. I'm not a maximalist, except on my own stuff. But what I could say is, if you don't have business marketing, if you don't have marketing people, sales people, and business development people on your team, that tells me two things. I'm just putting my business hat on. Tells me two things. Your organization doesn't value those functions, and those functions aren't being performed. And to me, it's not a surprise or a shock that there isn't mass adoption anywhere. And this is why. How about a blockchain talking to their customers about what they should build? Yeah. Doesn't happen. They just build it and they will come, which is, and this is so stereotypical. It's an engineering mindset. It's the engineers build things and hope people will come. They just keep adding features and benefits and hoping they'll come. When the business guys like me go, well, let me go talk to the potential customer and see if there's a problem I need to solve, and then build
Yeah.
a system that solves the problem.
Yeah.
So, and this is where most blockchains, and I believe why there is no mass adoption by any blockchain today or anybody doing payments, is because they aren't solving a problem for anybody or a recognized problem. So
Yeah.
people say, well, I look at it, grandma doesn't have a problem with her debit card buying things at Walmart.
Yeah.
And you're trying to make grandma have to go through a lot of hoops and a huge learning curve to use something that's not user-friendly as a payment system with no benefit and added cost. How do you think that's going to get mass adoption anywhere? It makes no sense to me. And this is so business 101. It's so fundamental. If you want to do a payment solution, you got to go and provide a payment solution to people that recognize and that actually have a problem with payments already. And then
which is
create a system for them.
Yeah, which is usually vendors. And I increasingly, again, I've been doing this for a long time, and I really feel like, history is a weird thing, right? Like a moment can come and you're not ready for it. And I think that maybe 2014 or 2015 was one of those moments, because that was when things like Overstock started accepting Bitcoin.
Right.
And I believe it was BitPay, again, a payments provider that they started like sponsoring bowl games, and somebody had I think there was a Super Bowl commercial that year. But the systems weren't ready. That was like the retailers, the people who, you're getting half of your profit margins wiped out by credit card companies. That's somebody who really needs some help. So they were excited, and in some cases ready to take the plunge, but the systems just weren't ready. And I'm not even convinced that they are now, but
not yet.
Yeah. That's one market that there was a chance, and it's just not quite there yet, but we'll come back around.
Well, I think ultimately, there's certain industries right now that do have a problem with traditional banking. Tusk, we're going after the gun industry because they have problems with traditional banking. You have, the adult industry, porn, they have problems with traditional banking.
Right.
Pawn shops, believe it or not, like payday lenders have some problems with traditional banking. Immigrants and refugees and, cross-border payments, they have a problem with traditional banking,
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's numerous gambling is another one,
Right.
Cannabis is another one. So you have legitimate industries out there that have legitimate problems with traditional banking now. And to me, if you're going after this, if you view it as crypto is supposed to solve a problem, that's where you need to start.
Yeah.
And you need to create products and package those products in a way that is the easiest for people to adopt. If your wallet app is not easier than if your wallet app isn't easier to work than Venmo, don't bother. It's not going to work. And so it's just interesting when especially like the maximalists in the crypto world that seem to be the most blockheaded, I guess, no pun intended, about this. When you point out basic concepts of business still apply to crypto and crypto adoption. And if you're just if you're making it harder and more expensive for someone to do something with no clear upside to that person, you will not get adoption. And if you don't have a specific protocol in place or a policy and a team to market those solutions for them in place, you're not going to get any sales. And to me, I mean, it just seems pretty straightforward why things are taking so long.
Yeah, and there's the other aspect of it is, and this might be what you were referring to when you talked about maximalists, is that there is, and this is something that we try and do at Breaker, there is a non-business element, right? There is the ideological element of we should all have non-state currency. It should be private. We should have these things that we're not really concerned from a business perspective. We're concerned from a freedom perspective. Right. And that's for better and for worse, obviously, because there's, maybe those people are not as concerned with usability, and they're going to be the edge case users where they're willing to go to any lengths to figure out a system. And and I have a lot, like I'm fascinated by that world and those people, and obviously the cypherpunks back in the 90s were the ones who drove a lot of this to become even possible. And so there's just, it's a transition, and it's also a constant mix. You have people who are driven by ideology, and then you have people who are driven by business, and everybody has different motivations. Personally, I'm just fascinated by all of it, and so I get to just sit here and be a spectator of this grand design.
Well, it's the activists versus the business people. So there's a great phrase out there, that pioneers take the arrows and settlers take the land.
Yeah.
So I cannabis industry, I knew a lot of people in that industry in Colorado when we lived in Colorado. And it was very interesting early on, is that for eons and eons, the cannabis activists, worked day and night tirelessly for years and years and years to get policies and laws changed. And after the laws got changed, they were basically locked out of the industry in many cases.
Yeah.
When, the infrastructure was created, then smarter heads prevailed. Now here's why. And now I have some theories on this. Now I've been a political activist, so I've been around a lot of activists. We're crazy. Activists are crazy in general, right?
Yeah.
But the things that make an activist, it partly is because they're disagreeable. Okay. Right. And it's also the Achilles heels of an activist. Activists are disagreeable, so they're willing to disagree with the mainstream and work to change it. Because you have to, if you're just a go with the flow kind of guy, you're not going to rock the boat. Activists rock the boat, and they're technically usually, let's just say, difficult sometimes to be around and work with. But over time, activists kind of push the mainstream to one side or the other, and they get things changed. Yeah. But overall, those same things that make them effective at being an activist make them difficult to actually, that stubbornness of being an activist, that disagreeableness that makes them a good activist, make them difficult to actually get at things off the ground. So I'll give you a great example. Like, let's look at Linux. I think Linux is an interesting thing. Free software, open source, cyberpunk. Linux is never going to take over the desktop. It's just not. It's too hard. Linux, I mean, they got some, and people are like, I use Linux because Linux is awesome, but it's just a little niche market of people that want to use Linux, and it's hard to use. It's hard to set up. You got to roll back kernels, and my driver for my Wi-Fi card doesn't work, and whatever else. And those people are perfectly content having the secret knowledge on how to make their Ubuntu installation work right. And they eschew, like, if you're not good enough with command line, you suck. Those kind of guys, right? But those guys are also like a lot of the early crypto guys. Like, I can run a command line node and do everything from my node wallet and command line this. And like, okay, that's great. High five. I love you guys, but grandma's not going to learn command line, but she should learn it because the dollar is being deflated by, the value of the dollar is being influenced by the Fed. Okay, get that. Not arguing with that, but grandma doesn't give a shit. Yeah. Grandma doesn't want to learn command line, but grandma should learn command line. See, that's an act.
Yeah. I always forget there's people like that. And, this is why I totally take your point. And there are two things that I would say that are really interesting about that, which is, one, as long as we're talking about public blockchains, it's a rare instance where both of those people can potentially interact. We're not there yet, but if you build something on top of a public blockchain that makes it easy to use, the anarchists can still go do whatever they want with the underlying stuff.
Sure.
And I find that super cool. And it's also on this topic, that's why I'm fascinated. I mean, he's a great guy, and I'm fascinated with him as like a character. But Eric Voorhees, who's the CEO of Shapeshift, is a really rare example of a guy who was a very early Bitcoin promoter and adopter on very strong ideological grounds. He's, I don't know what variety of libertarian you would call him, but a very extreme libertarian for sure.
Yeah, I'd say that.
But he's also, he's really been trying to, and I think with some success, become a business person and build sustainable businesses. And he seems to have the mindset for it. The story of Shapeshift is pretty incredible. it's really, I mean, I want to phrase this carefully, but it, in its original form, was an incredibly handy tool for doing things that the government would not want you to do. And now that has been pushed back and muted a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. But the fact that he more or less publicly launched that as a company, and started driving revenue off of it until somebody told him he couldn't, is interesting. And I think he's played it as well as he could, but I think there's also kind of a,
but look at, like, that's an interesting case. So Shapeshift, they implemented AML KYC, right, voluntarily.
right.
And the crypto community, like, the backlash against him for doing that. And I just pointed out, and again, it was the comments you see are ridiculous sometimes on some of these threads. And I really don't like anonymous people anyway. They're always jerks when people are anonymous and have no skin in the game. But
right.
they were saying he's a sellout and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I understand the thinking on that, but he's been very public about this. He didn't launch it in a hidden anonymous way like Satoshi did, right? Everybody knows who runs Shapeshift. And the fact is, and this is the thing you don't seem to understand, is AML KYC came out of the Patriot Act, right? Isn't the Patriot Act's that same little set of laws and rules and regulations that people kidnap you off the streets in some random, Timbuktu, and then take you to Guantanamo Bay with, like, earmuffs on and a blindfold.
Yeah.
So, and that's the same thing that they indict people for, supporting terrorist things all over the world. So and they're calling him like a sellout. And I'm like, dude, it's not like they don't know who he is or where he is. And he doesn't want to go to prison.
Yeah. I mean, it's a morality play. He is very vocal about his beliefs. He's trying to balance those against living in the real world, and he gets crucified for it. And I do think that it's a lot, again, younger people who maybe don't have the most complex view of the world, or the trade-offs that we all make every day to live in a way that tries to be in alignment with some of our ideals. But you got to eat, you got to run a business, you want to build things that are meaningful, and there are compromises and trade-offs. And so this is, it's a reasonable place to put in a plug for us, because Breaker, we're like about that deeper story, the more complex issues that people are grappling with, and trying to look at it from different angles. And it is fascinating in those ways, because you have this, I don't want to say culture of lawlessness. That's actually, if you want to cut that out, that's not what I meant to say. But you have people who have certain very strongly held ideals, and
it's
then across the board,
call it a frontier. We're in a frontier.
Exactly. That's a much better way of putting it. I mean, lawless in a less judgmental way, right? It's literally, we don't know what the laws are, or we haven't all figured it out yet, and we're figuring it out. And that is exciting and interesting, but also scary. And to bring it back around to the media thing, I mean, that's the one thing I will say about that space too, is that I do think that there are honestly people who, and this is both kind of being apologetic on their behalf, but it's also in its own way very scary. There are a lot of people who don't know that it's not normal to pay for press coverage. And that includes people who read websites and people who work at them. And, that's another reason why I wanted to come on and talk to you here, is that, like, I want to get that message across. Like, you don't pay for coverage. It's not normal. It doesn't give you good information if that's the model that you're working on. You end up with hype and bubbles and all the stuff that we've already seen happen.
Well, it distorts markets. And here's the thing.
Exactly.
Like,
distorts markets.
Do your own research. So do your own research, and go back to that piece, right? If you're going to do research, you have to have good information to rely on. And when people are paying for coverage and media people are, promoting people based on payments, you don't have good information.
Right. There's no incentive to give good information if somebody's paying you to write just the information that they've given you, that they want you to have.
So if you believe in the message of decentralization or, self-regulation, and you don't want the government involved, and you want the ability for the market, a true, pure, free market to happen, you have to actually give honest coverage, and it has to be, the information has to be as pure as possible.
Yes.
And without that, there's no way even good investors can make good decisions, let alone the average mom and pop on the street investor. They can't do their own research if the information is bogus.
Yeah. And this is a much bigger discussion, but the way that seems like it's going to go is you're going to have, paid information products. You're going to have to subscribe to a website like Breaker. We have some runway and we're still building our audience. So everything we're doing is free right now. Get it while you can. There is a pretty good likelihood that we're going to transition to a paid model down the road. The Block is in the process of doing that right now. And more generally, the news industry is trending towards paid models where the really good information that people who have those investigative and analytical skills produce is something you have to pay for. And I think that's hopefully going to, cross your fingers, we're going to save the news industry by actually getting people to pay for stuff again. But we'll see how that goes.
Well, this goes back to and I know we're almost out of time, but going back to like the recent BuzzFeed had to lay off a bunch of people, right?
Right.
And I don't have any sympathy for BuzzFeed, and they're clearly a biased model. They're everything, and on top of that, there's not any. In a lot of cases, really no journalism. It's garbage media. I call it bubblegum media.
Mm-hmm.
And why they're hurting so badly is because they're putting out crap. And I'm not saying it's crypto related, but I'm saying it's just very biased reporting in one direction politically. Now I have my own cases, my own issues with Orange Jesus, and the Democrats too. I don't like either side of the political spectrum these days. But what I'm saying is, when your whole model is to hate the president, or write just bubblegum stuff that's just garbage reporting, not doing investigative stuff like the stuff Breaker Mag's doing, you're going to lose. Because people eventually want something of substance. Honestly, if you told people, if the influencers were open, I'm getting paid to shill this from the day one, people want to be told the truth. I think they wouldn't have ever gotten their influence, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that the BuzzFeed example is interesting because that political orientation that you're talking about, it's very emotionally driven. And I think that if you're going to generate a mass audience, that's the lowest common denominator. You're going to get somebody angry about something. We I think we'll get into this at some point when we talk more, but we're from slightly different positions on the political spectrum. But my example that I find so enraging is CNN. They went from 5 years ago, maybe they were still nominally kind of an objective news reporting organization, and they've just gone off the rails.
Right.
And it's sad to see. And, it's linked to the business model, right? They're trying to put their thing out there for free, even though they're on cable. But so the point being, if you're a person who wants to apply their analytical mind, which is what you have to be if you're going to be an investor or a speculator or whatever, you have to sort of look to the future. Your emotions can't be involved, that's for sure. And so that kind of information that's just, fact-based, here's the things that we've found out, here's the picture that emerges from the facts that we have assembled. That's stuff that costs money to produce, frankly, because it doesn't appeal to that mass audience that's driven by emotion necessarily.
Well, it's a lot of work too. I mean, my day job, I actually do some investigation as a consultant. I do expert legal work and stuff. So I have to go and do real investigations and sort problems out, but that's a different topic. But it is a lot of work. And it takes time. And if you want good investigative journalism, it does take time and it does take work. And I think, people should get paid for that. And if you're putting out good product, I would pay for that. And I think that most people would, if it's clearly objective and truth-seeking and trying to promote good stuff or interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly hope you and other other media outlets that are coming into crypto really take that seriously, because I think it's good for the industry. It's healthy, but I think you'll also be rewarded for it, because I think people are looking for that. And I hope the same happens to us. But we're going to wrap up here. But where can people find out more about you and your outfit?
Well, outfit, literally. Here we go. Let me see if I can get this in camera. Breaker. There we go.
I want one of those shirts.
I think we might be able to set that up. This is actually our. There you go. So we're actually at breakermag.com. And if you want to, I'm on Twitter at David Z Morris, Z as in zebra in the middle, Morris. I'm very active on Twitter, as Rob has found out.
Absolutely.
People can check me out, and we try and do our best.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And
thanks for having me. This is great.
We need to do this. Actually, I think we should probably do this more regularly. So let's try to plan for that. All right. Thanks a lot, David. You have a great day.
All right. You too.
Thank you for listening to the Rob McNealy program. Make sure you check us out on the web at robmcnealy.com and subscribe to our podcast at YouTube, iTunes, and on the Google Play Store.